Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to today's meeting of the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The first item on the agenda today is the appointment of chairman. I believe at the County Council meeting on the 17th of May, Mrs. Fry was nominated as chairman-elect. Could I please have a formal nomination and a seconder?
I'd like to propose Mrs. Fry. Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Delighted to be as Scrutiny Committee. Right, we now move on and welcome to the meeting today. It's been broadcast live by the County Council's website. It will also be available for viewing after the meeting. I ask that all members and officers have the microphone on mute. They wish or invited to speak. I have received apologies from Martin, Canon Carolyn Lewis, Mr. Haji Nicolau, and Mr. Craig Smith is substituting, and Mr. Gattatoria Mary. I would now like to ask for nominations for Deputy Chairman, and I would like to nominate Mr. Hills to seconder, please.
I'll second it, Chair. Thank you.
Very much. Those in favour? Next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of March 23, and I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is everybody in agreement? Item 4, I have received no questions from members of the public. I have questions. Item 5, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I've received 2 questions from members today. I would like to remind members that no discussion is held on these. First is from Mr. King, who is not present in the meeting. The question and its response have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. Second question is from Mr. Mack, who is present at the meeting today. The team's question and its response have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. I now invite Mrs. Hack to ask a supplementary question if you have one. And I would remind you that your supplementary question should clarify the reply have been given and not raise any. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just to let you know, I can't see anybody in Spark and Hove, so apologies. And the volume through the Teams isn't great either, so I'm not sure what's happened there. But I do have some supplementary questions. So supplementary to question 1 is, what is the current position with regards to the Multi-Academy Trust? Do we, as the statutory authority responsible allocating young people to schools and providing enough places, have assurance that the schools are well maintained and well repaired? Do you want to just go on to the next one?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, Mrs. Hack, please.
Thank you. Yeah, supplementary to question 2. Where does a councillor find out the information on a multi-academy trust school building and the quality of the building? Just as an example, I have got 4 multi-academy trust primary schools in my division. Every single one is with a different multi-academy trust, so it'd be really useful for councillors to be given the information of what's the central point, or isn't there any, and where do we go to get that assurance? Supplementary to question 3. The question I was trying to understand is the openness within the head teachers group about the school buildings, and if they are confident as head teachers that the programme of works needed to keep their schools free of category C and D defects were in place. Supplementary to question 4. In light of this list of 38 school buildings that are receiving patch-up funding from the Department for Education, 10 of these are for roof works and 14 contain the word safe. Does this mean that the buildings are currently unsafe for our young people? And finally, supplementary to question 6, what is the requirement for multi-academy trust? Who provides assurance? And whilst we had assurance when the estate was transferred from ourselves to the multi-academy trusts, the longer these buildings are being managed by many bodies, the risk of standard quality to repairs, the risk gets greater. How do we seek assurance, and where do we seek that assurance from? Thank you, Chair. I understand a written response will be given after the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mrs. Hack. I think in order to make sure that we give a full response, that we'll look into this in more detail and then provide a full written response to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, we now move on. Item 6, I have no urgent items. Item 7, declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members have any declarations of interest they wish to note? No. Thank you. Declarations of the party whip. Do members wish to declare the party whip? I have not. Party whip, so no whip. Item 9, I have not received any petitions. Item 10, we're now moving on to the first substantive item, which is the report on the inclusion in Leicestershire schools. It's on page 11 to 24 of your agenda pack. Alison Bradley, Assistant Director for Education, SEND and Commissioning, and Justin Roberts, welcome. Head of Service for Education Quality and Inclusion will present this item. Please go ahead when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll mainly present the item and then myself and Justin can take any follow-up questions on there. So the report is there to provide an overview of children who are missing out on education or electively home educated, along with the duty for the virtual school lead for children known to a social worker. We last presented this report to this committee in January 2022. In paragraphs 7 to 12, it mainly highlights what the duties are for those children missing out on education, and in particular, it's children missing out on education, children with medical needs, elective home education, and provision for excluded children and children not in education, employment and training. In paragraphs 15 to 23, it expands upon what the Inclusion Service provides in relation to these duties, and in particular, in paragraphs 21 to 23, I wanted to highlight that a new addition since we reported this in January 2022 is that the court team that was formerly in the admission service has moved over to join and be part of the inclusion service. This happened at the same time that the government guidance was published outlining the increased duties of local authorities for working together to improve school attendance. The court team was duly renamed the attendance team to reflect the new duties and to emphasise that their primary role is to support children and young people back into school and not to fine and prosecute families. This is the addition to this wider inclusion service offer has been an asset both to the teams and to the same objectives to get children back into school. In paragraphs 24 to 25, we've got the data that it relates to all the children missing education duties onto there. We have in the children missing educations in paragraph 24 the details of the numbers. We are seeing an increase, but this is in line with the national trend. In paragraphs 27 to 30, we've equally got the exclusions data and narrative to explain what's happening with that. We are seeing this slightly increasing, but it's not over exceeding national expectations around exclusions. In paragraphs 31 to 36, we've got children with medical needs data, and again we have got an increase in children with medical needs being referred to the service, and the details in paragraphs 31 to 36 do outline the provision that is there for children with medical needs. In particular, I wanted to highlight the use effectively of the AV1 robots. In paragraphs 37 to 41, we also highlight the children not in education, employment and training, and again we have got a slight dip in those numbers compared to previous years. In Paragraphs 42 to 45, we've got elective home education being reported on. And again, this is a data that is showing that there is a rise in numbers of families electing to electively home educate, but this is seen alongside a national trend. In paragraphs 47 to 49, there's more detail in there in terms of the duty for currently undertaken to extend functions of the inclusion service or the virtual school lead to champion those children known to a social worker and to promote their education. The report does detail that where children are known to a social worker and are out of education or at risk of exclusion, the inclusion service prioritises them and works with children's social care to support those schools and children and young people themselves. That's the end of the highlight of the report to take you through, but we're happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you very much. Just one point on the page 11, paragraph 1. It says, provide an overview of the temporary strategic duty. Should that be altered or is that still temporary?
That was an error on our part there. It should actually be noted as permanent in there.
Much indeed for clarification. Right, I have Mr. Walsh, Mr. Smith and Mr. Merry. So, Mr. Walsh.
The Timson report actually was published at a similar time that we actually were implementing the inclusion service. So we are following, by coincidence, I suppose, many of the recommendations in there, and we do refer back to those to check that we are following through on the Timson updates onto there.
It's not something I remember families doing in the past. I just wondered what thoughts you had.
The report here details that, and the performance report does note that there are various factors that do influence that. One of them is by pure choice, that families are making that choice to electively home educate. Some of it, when we do the detail, and Justin can probably speak to this a little bit more as well in terms of the feedback that we get from parents when they make that choice, is to do with the school. They're not feeling comfortable, the child's not feeling comfortable there and wanting to be there. We have had a slight increase since we've gone through the COVID period, that some of the families have continued to teach from home. That was a choice they wanted to continue with, but we do continue to look at the elective home education to see if there are any further factors that we're not picking up on immediately.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to paragraph 24, the children missing education. It's quite clear that obviously the COVID played a big part in the huge jump that we had, and it's continued to rise since. Now, it's arguable that obviously that rise is due to the fact that COVID and we're catching up essentially. But if we look at the 2018-2019, the 2019-2020, the rise was already there prior to COVID. What are we doing as a department to try and mitigate that happening even further?
Justine again can probably add on to this, but I'll start the feedback onto there. We're sometimes a victim of our own kind of interrogation around the data and checking and following up. So we've got more robust data coming into the department. So that's one action that we are taking and look to strengthen that more and more. And it was particularly amplified during the period of COVID because we were checking and making sure where we got children who were meant to be in school, as in those vulnerable cohorts or children known to a key worker. So we were very clear at making sure that we're much more robust around that. As we've moved through, we do return to the data sets and look at what is it we can do to reprofile some of the service and the functions that we've got within the inclusion service. But I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that, Justine.
No, there's nothing else apart from that we do monitor the trends and we're always looking for the patterns within that.
Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Chair. First time on the meeting. First of all, thank you to the officers for the report. Made very interesting reading. My question is also on paragraph 24, children missing education. I was quite surprised to see that over 50% of the children who are missing education, their whereabouts are not known. So what do the officers do to try and locate those missing children?
Again, thank you, Mr. Murray. I'll answer the question in the first instance, but Justine will probably answer this. It's a very iterative set of data that we provide here. So that whereabouts not known is always a worrying kind of figure. It's more kind of amplified in the worry if they are not on the roll of a school and not known. So with those actions, we work with other agencies to track the whereabouts, because it might be other professionals that are involved, and we may have intelligence that they've moved out of the authority, and we pursue that through. Where they are on the roll of the school, we are working with the role of the school to make sure that they are employing whatever services and support that they have got to be able to do that. But it can be quite a changing picture day on day, because we do find that and then we do act upon that if it becomes a much more significant worry.
No more comments. Mrs. Taylor, did you want to come back on anything on this matter?
No, nothing from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Roberts. Thank you. And Alison. Right, we now move on to the next item, which is item 11, and your page 25 to 32 of your agenda pack, which is the Leicestershire Family Hubs. And this is going with Sharon and Ellie Lowe. Thank you very much and welcome, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The report before you highlights the detail of our responsibilities around the development of family hubs, and some particular funding that we applied for and were fortunate to receive. Ellie, as service manager for this area, has been a lead in developing our programme rollout for family hubs. So Ellie's going to give a presentation to members, and then we're both happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So I'll just begin by giving an overview and a reminder about family hubs. So as Sharon has mentioned, we applied for funding, it seems like a really long time ago now, and there was some delay in the announcement of our successful bid, but we did receive that last year and received just under £1 million. And the timescale in which we have to spend that amount of money is up until March 2024. However, the DFE have just announced in the last week or so they'll extend that now to September 2024, which gives us a little longer to put our plans into action. So family hubs can be summarised as a one-stop shop, a place of information for families of children 0 to 19 or up to 25 where the child has additional needs or special educational needs and disabilities. And they're a blend of buildings, but also a virtual space through the development of a Family Hubs website. Next slide, please. So just to give a quick overview also of other related programmes to the Family Hubs programme. So Reducing Parental Conflict is an aligned programme which is funded through the Department of Works and Pensions. And the focus of that programme is to work with families where unresolved and frequent conflict is having a detrimental impact on the well-being of children and their future outcomes. And this is one of the central programmes of the Family Hubs. The second programme is supporting families, which some of you may remember as the Troubled Families programme. Again, this is very much aligned. At the time of writing this, supporting families was part of the work of the Department of Levelling Up, but it has just recently announced moving into the Department for Education to be more aligned with Family Hubs. And so within the Family Hubs work stream, we have a few different work programmes. So the first one is Start for Life, and that is the focus on the 0 to 5 age group, really focusing on maternity and early childhood. And the governance of that particular work stream is now sitting under priority 1 of the Children and Families Partnership Plan. We've begun work with the multi-agency workshop, and we have a draft strategy for maternity and early childhood and a draft action plan which will be considered by the Children and Families Board in September. The other major work streams are data sharing, so that links to the Supporting Families programme, which has a priority on person level data sharing to ensure that agencies are targeting their resources to the families who need the most, workforce development and online and digital offer. The next slide, please. I won't run through all of the Family Hub objectives as there are quite a few on the slide, but obviously the work of the Family Hubs is aimed at improving the lives of children and families through partnership working, through strengthening family relationships and enabling children to thrive in their local communities. And the next slide, please. This just illustrates within our Family Hubs model, we are also talking, so as well as having hubs where the core offer of Family Hubs will be, that includes things like midwifery sessions, health visitor clinics, there'll be advice available to families who call into the buildings, volunteer-led groups. We're also talking about spokes, and we're really pleased to be working with Leicestershire Libraries to develop areas in the library buildings where there are Family Hub resources. We're providing training to library staff so that they can talk to families and support them to find the services and information that they're looking for. We have also spoken to a few community groups and looking to see how we can support them in their offers. Family Hubs also includes outreach, as some families will not have access to a building, and we know that digital poverty is an issue for some families, so outreach continues to be part of our offer. And as I've mentioned, the development of a Family Hubs website is seen as a really key part of the work we want to do. So as well as being a place for information, we're also aiming to develop self-help resources for those families who are able to self-help and then not need to be referred into a service, but also providing resources for professionals working right across our partnership. So these might be, for example, use of videos for families wanting support around their parenting and child behaviour. Next slide, please. The next few slides just give some examples of the types of activities that we could see either through a hub building, through a spoke, through outreach or on the digital offer. So one of the examples on this first slide is about a parent coming to a wellbeing cafe, which is a volunteer-led session, being able to talk to an adult mental health worker while she's there, being able to talk to a family worker. So what we're trying to build and what we are succeeding in building is having, for example, a health visitor clinic running at the same time as we're delivering a 0 to 2 pathway for new parents, so that families are coming to the building for more than one service. It's a building they're familiar with and feel comfortable with, and it takes away some of the anxiety that sometimes new families might feel on entering a service. Next slide, please. So spokes, as I've mentioned, we're working very closely with libraries. We know that libraries are buildings that many families like to go to and are accustomed to going to. We're doing some training with library staff, but also all front-facing staff across our children and families teams. And so we're looking at training for them, which includes things like trauma-informed practice and awareness of mental health first aid, making every contact count, and also being able to identify and understand the impact of parental conflicts on families. So that means that library staff are better equipped to support families to find the services that may be of use to them. The next slide, please. The digital offer. So as well as having a place of information and resources, we are also continuing to offer an online service to families. So during COVID and after COVID, many families have told us that things like parenting groups, they actually prefer to access online because it means they don't have to travel anywhere, they don't have to find childcare. So we're looking to see how we can continue and enhance that. And on to the next slide, outreach. Obviously, some families don't have access to online services, don't have access to a nearby building. So we'll continue to provide outreach services to them. Again, working with libraries, we're looking at how things like the library bus can take information and resources out to families and be another source of information. We're also thinking about how we do outreach as practitioners and have problem solving and peer sessions to enable staff to work together and understand the breadth of services that are available for families. Just briefly on reducing parental conflict, as I've mentioned, it's a DWP funded programme. We've taken very much a partnership approach to this and have a subgroup of the Early Help Partnership Group who've been working together since 2020 on this area of work. So far we've trained over 400 practitioners to use a practitioner toolkit that's been developed for Leicestershire. We've also done many hundred of awareness raising sessions for practitioners across the broader early help workforce. The subgroup has produced a document called Relationships Matter in Leicestershire, and this sets out why we believe relationships matter, why family relationships are particularly important, and our vision and commitment. I'm sorry, I forgot to say next slide. I've moved on. I'll just now pick up on workforce development, slide 13. So one of the other areas, work streams of the family hubs, is looking at workforce development. And this is also a priority under the newly formed prevention and early intervention subgroup of the strategic partnership group. So we've been having some early discussions across City, Rutland and County to talk about developing an early help competency framework. So this is looking at the key skills and the principles and values that we would want to see right across the broad early help workforce. And by that I include for example, housing officers, people based in district and borough councils, health staff, as well as obviously staff in the county council. So looking at core skills and core values and building on the work that we're doing with libraries. So trauma-informed practice is a really key element of what we believe the workforce needs, this awareness of parental conflict and the impact on children, but also an ability to signpost families and help them to understand the breadth of information and services that are available to them. As time and again, as we talk to practitioners and we talk to families, one of the barriers sometimes for families and for practitioners is understanding the wealth of information and services that might be available, and it's just not having all of that information at your fingertips. And next slide, just a couple of quick summary slides. So there will be family hub buildings in every district and borough of the council. The main buildings will be children and family wellbeing centres, which currently exist, but we will be adding to that the library spokes. The funding that we have is not capital spend, so there are no new buildings. And really the money is very much about startup money for initiatives that we are ensuring are sustainable beyond the period of the grant funding. So to give you an example, one of the projects that we're doing is called Maternity Champions Project, and this is targeting women in Loughborough in particular. It's based on evidence that Black, Asian and women from more disadvantaged communities are 4 times more likely to die during pregnancy and childbirth. So we're doing some work there to identify the barriers to accessing services, and we're working with local communities to develop maternity champions as part of our sustainable programme going forward. So within Children and Family Wellbeing Service, we have a volunteer programme where volunteers are supported by volunteer development officers, and that work will pick up this project that's been started through the Family Hubs funding. Similarly, with the Family Hubs website, we will be picking that up with a dedicated role funded from within our existing resources. So all of the work that we start, we have a sustainability plan around it. The next slide just shows the list of months and buildings and where they are and where they'll open, and we'll be providing a more detailed list with actual venues to all the elected members so that you're aware of what's opening in your area. And I think I probably already covered most things in that final slide. Just to mention, we do have a couple of community engagement workers, because working with families is clearly really, really important to make sure that we get this offer right, we get the offer in our buildings right and our website right. So we're doing a lot of community engagement work over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really interesting. Just before I open it, ask Mr. Taylor and then open it up to questions and comments. Will it be possible for these slides to be circulated to all members? Because I think all councillors, I know we can have that, but I do think for all councillors it would be. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Taylor?
I'm happy to let the members ask questions, and I can pick up anything at the end if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Right, Mr. Merry.
Thank you, Chair. Again, first time on this committee, another great report. Thank you to the officers. I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea. And my first question was, can we have the slides? So that's already been asked. Thank you very much. Second one is, the budget you've got, does it include a communications budget so you can really sell it and get some posters out there and get on social media and really sell it? Because it's the first I've heard of it coming to this meeting. And I understand the Colville hub was opened and the cabinet member was attacked by a cardboard cutout, and I hope you've recovered from that traumatic experience. Thanks for the picture, Craig. And I think it should be sent out to the parish councils, the district councils, the borough councils. You really need to get out there and sell this. I think it's a fantastic idea, great idea, and I wish you every success. And my last question is, how are you going to measure success? How are you going to measure if this is working or not? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we are working on a communication strategy. We have used some of the budget to develop an identity, a logo, and we're working very hard to get our communications out. I think it's an ongoing thing that we need to keep continuously communicating, but we will try harder. And I'm sorry that this is the first that you've heard of Family Hub, so we'll take that away. So your second question, sorry, could you remind me? Measuring of success, we're just currently out to tender for an evaluation project, which is going to look at the process. This is part of what we were asked to include in our bid. So they will be looking at the progress around process, around partnership work, and ultimately with families to find out what difference they feel that they've noticed. It's quite difficult because the funding period is quite short, so we don't really have time to do the longer term follow-up within that evaluation, but that is in hand, and it's something that we'll be asking the evaluators to work with us on, the outcomes framework.
I'm going to hospital this afternoon for an appointment, and every time I go, I do fill in the cards. They have cards there saying, how did you find your service today? A simple thing like a card in the community hubs for the people to fill in, or even a stand. How was your service today? 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star. And you'll get some great advice and some great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Mr. Frisbee, Mr. Welsh and Mr. Hills and Mr. Hunt. So Mr. Frisbee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much. A robust and very worthwhile project and report. Thank you for that. I apologise. I was desperately trying to take notes when I didn't need to, because you're going to send out the slides now. So I'll stop doing that. Can I just ask, is this going across county, or have you just got targeted areas? And like my colleague, Mr. Merry, I've never heard of it. It's very refreshing, particularly we've had such a battering of the Sure Start centres, and it's quite an interesting switch sell from our point of view. So, I mean, I'm obviously here batting for Melton Mowbray, as I always will be. Is it likely something that we'll see in Melton and that area? Thank you.
Yes, there will be building a family hub, at least one in every district and borough council area, and I believe Melton is due later this month.
Thank you. I think just in support of the officers, I think a couple of press releases have gone out about the family hubs. Okay, so I know you're all very busy people and it's hard sometimes to pick them up, but they went out in the last week about them all. So, right, I have Mr. Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. We used to have the Troubled Families scheme, and if we're looking for a model of being able to measure performance, is there not anything we can lift from that? There seems so many parallels between that scheme and this. And just, I suppose I also want to say how similar this leads us to family centres and what we used to do. So, but these things occur. So, yeah.
Yes, so I also lead on Supporting Families, which is the Troubled Families programme. And we have a new outcomes framework that we're working to nationally. Now that Family Hubs has been aligned with Supporting Families, my hope and anticipation is that that national outcomes framework will sit across Family Hubs. But in the evaluation tender that we have out at the moment, it's been specified in there that they need to align what we're doing with Family Hubs with Supporting Families, as that method works really well.
In the digital offer, are we having to lend families laptops where there's intensive work being done?
That's not something that we have been doing. What we're looking to do at the moment is whether we can cite additional laptops or similar in some of the Family Hub buildings. So the reason we're going with libraries is because of the public access computers there. So we want to encourage the use of those existing ones, but we also are looking at how we can supplement that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hills.
Thanks, Chair. Ellie, you said it seems like a long time coming, these hubs, but actually, I think it was only a year ago that the funding was confirmed, wasn't it? So I think that's pretty quick, to be honest. I think you've done a really good job of already cutting the ribbon on 2 centres, I think it is. And obviously, you've got a time frame for the rest of them. So it's a well done to the team on that. I've got 2 questions. First one is obviously a lot of the report and the focus has been on sort of early years and childbirth and families. Can you just expand on what the offer is for sort of older teenagers? Because I know it goes up to 19 and then even 25 in some cases. And this is what's sort of innovative about this model compared to previous, isn't it? That it sort of gets for older people as well. And the second bit is about where do you see the hubs developing over the next sort of 2 years, 5-year timeframe?
So yes, as you say, the age group does go up to 18, 19 or 25 for young people with SEND needs. We're currently working with groups of young people, and that's something that we want to do more of, to explore how they view the buildings that we have and to what extent they feel accessible to young people. We have already done some of that work, and some of the young people, because these are buildings in their community that are known of, are not feeling particularly positive necessarily towards some of the buildings. So we'll be working with them on that to think about what we can do about that, whether there are changes we can make. The second thing we're doing is with the Family Hub's website is making an area that is for young people. So on entering the website, you choose between being a parent, a professional, a young person or a volunteer. And the young person site is going to look very different because it's already being informed by what young people want. We also know that young people use technology quite differently, so we're being very careful to explore all of that with them. I think the buildings are going to be a challenge, having, you know, very small children and teenagers in the same building, but we have managed it successfully in our contact centres where we have young people feeling quite comfortable to come into the building. So it's something we're going to explore and build on. 2 years' time, I hope that we have thriving Family Hubs. For me, what's really important is about the range of offer and the number of different practitioners and organisations working from those hubs. We know that it can be very nerve-wracking for a young person, a family, a child to come to a building. It's so much easier if they know what it looks like because they've seen the video on the Family Hub. They know they can see their health visitor, or they can see their youth worker, their drugs worker, their adult mental health worker in that same building. They know that those professionals are working together as a team around their family, and we hope that they won't be having to tell their story multiple times to lots of different professionals.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the presentation. And I'm very impressed with the way it's been put across, and also very encouraged that you've got responsibility on troubled families, and obviously know a great deal about the area. Concerning libraries, just a quick question on that. Are you using libraries in the community libraries or just the Leicestershire libraries? That's just a little question. Another one was about comms. I think what's vital in communications is how we approach our potential clients. You know, banging the drum about a new form of supporting people in difficulty is one thing, but really what we want to do is to get to the potential clients that we've got. But my major question is this, and I think it was the second or third slide that you showed of all the things that you were aiming to achieve. But those are things that we already do, or they are aspirations that we've already got. And in the past we've had it with troubled families, and before that there were previous structures and schemes. So what you've got now is a different structure and scheme with £1 million, which we're going to talk about at regular intervals on the press, I gather, building up the amount of money as we go. So we've got £1 million, and that has a finite period to be spent. So after September now 2024, we'll be running a new structure and schemes with the same money we've got at the moment. So that's something that doesn't quite add up to me yet. And when we know more about the scheme, it might make sense. But it seems to me that it's great to have the enthusiasm. It's great to have a new structure. It's great to be covering the whole canvas and going out digitally as well. But in the end, we'll still have the same objectives we've got at the moment with the same amount of money and presumably the same number of staff. And that's where it doesn't add up to me, Chair. But hopefully we will know in due course.
Thank you. Jane Moore, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, I'll pick up that last question first, and then Ellie will be able to pick up some of the stuff around libraries. I think your last question is a really good question. I think we're really fortunate in Leicestershire that we have had children's centres, we have had Sure Start, so we've got the buildings in place that we can build on and add to. I think, as Ellie's described in the presentation, we need to be clear that the family hubs model is an expansion of what we already do really well. With an express focus on making sure we provide the right support for all ages. So our Children's Centre programme was aimed at 0 to 5-year-olds, so we had other services supporting those older, and again, prior to that, Sure Start, or around that time, Sure Start was 0 to 5 as well. So the notion of family hubs is very much about how we expand the support for families, but also, as Ellie's pointed out, how we make sure not only that it's accessible for those that need it, but it's targeting the right areas of support. So that real focus around relationships and around reducing parental conflict, that's the kind of added value, I guess, to what we're delivering through family hubs. The point around funding, it is an important one. We were given just under £1 million to kind of set up the family hubs. And again, we've been fortunate in Leicestershire because not only do we have a number of buildings that we've been able to expand and will be expanding into family hubs, but we have a really strong children and family wellbeing service, which was our supporting families service, and it is continuing to deliver on the troubled families agenda. So in terms of the funding, we're not reliant on the ongoing £1 million. That £1 million is being used to really establish the kind of new way of working and some of the branding. What we're doing across the department is using our existing early help offer to expand how we deliver our support to families, and that will mean that we can make it sustainable going forward, and as Ellie's described, then deliver our kind of ongoing ambition around family hubs. Ellie, I'll hand over to you around the one around, are we using community libraries or LCC? And then I guess it would be helpful to add a bit about how we're approaching our potential service users as well.
So on community libraries versus LCC, we agreed with the library service to start with LCC libraries, as that felt perhaps an easier place to start. But actually, whilst doing that, we have been contacted now by some community libraries, and so we're talking to them also at the same time to look and see how we can work with them. And sorry, the second part. Potential clients, thank you. So as I mentioned, we have the community engagement workers. We've also commissioned the Centre for Fun and Families to do a particular piece of work around maternity services, and we're hoping to commission the Gypsy and Traveller organisation to do some work with those particular communities as well. So really focusing what we do on what families are telling us, and that's reflected in many, many ways. So in the Reducing Parental Conflict programme, we asked parents, we told them about what we were trying to do. We asked parents and young people about the language that they would use to build up that programme and to sell that programme. And they came back very strongly to talk about arguing. And those were the words they wanted us to use, how to argue better and not to use conflict. So in everything we're producing, we're trying to reflect the language that communities, that families are telling us that they use. So hopefully it makes a better connection for them, and we're not full of jargon and professional phrase.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You wanted to come back, Mrs. Taylor?
Just very briefly, what the funding for it will be used sort of mainly at the beginning of it, and then the hubs will just start opening more. I think the way that maybe is helpful for you to understand will be about the training. So within Leicestershire County Council, we have mental health first aiders. So it hasn't cost us any money. We've trained everybody that want to be a mental health first aider, and they're now mental health first aiders. And I suppose that's the same for our trauma informed. We had a chunk of money that Bernardo's delivered a programme of trauma informed for all our frontline workers. So once all that training is in place, people will be able to train each other. So I think for me, that's what we're trying to do now, is train all our frontline people. So whatever service you access as a member of Leicestershire County, that, you know, whether you go to a library, to a doctor's surgery, to a health and wellbeing, a family hub, wherever you go, you will be able to get that information that you need at that place, and you won't have to be referred to somewhere else, and then you've got to ring somewhere else, then you've got to go here. That's our aim, is that wherever you present with an issue or concerns, that you're directed to the right place first time. So that's what the chunk of the money will be, ensuring that we've got that robust frontline service, that families can come to us and they know exactly what response they'll get. They'll know it's a safe place to go, and that would get referred to the right place first time.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Taylor. I'm looking at the committee. I think it would be useful for all of us if the report came back maybe in 6 or 12 months as progress, because everybody's very busy and you can lose track. And I think maybe an interim report and then a final report a year late, after a year, when there will be some positive things and results that can come out of it. Is that agreeable? Right, if you could make a note of that, Damien. And is that agreeable with everybody else? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A great report. Thank you. Very, very interesting. And we now move on. Sorry, Mr. President.
Can I just offer an apology, officers? Your schedule of rollout is very clear. On page 27, it's the way I read it. I got hub and spoke wrapped. I can imagine hub and spoke are the same thing, aren't they? There's not going to be a lesser service. That's what I was trying to say. Everybody will get the same. Yeah, thank you. I apologise, Chair. Thank you.
Right. Okay, we now move on to item 12, which is a report on unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. It's on page 33 to 38 of your agenda packs, and I believe, Sharon, you're leading on this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the report before you outlines the purpose of bringing the report to committee is to provide an overview of our duties and responsibilities as a local authority to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So following the report, section 2 to 5 outline for members our statutory duties and responsibilities that are laid down in legislation. Going on from point 6, paragraph 7 onwards, it outlines for you the 3 main routes that unaccompanied asylum-seeking children come to Leicestershire and become the responsibility of the local authority. The first of those is the National Transfer Scheme. So the report outlines for you on paragraph 7, but also paragraph 18 and 19, that the national scheme was originally a voluntary scheme that Leicestershire County Council chose not to be part of. And then in 2021, it became compulsory that all authorities needed to take part in the scheme. So a number of children, unaccompanied asylum seeking children, are identified at periods of time to come to Leicestershire and for Leicestershire to take responsibility. Those exact numbers depend on how many children are arriving in the country, but are worked out per local authority on the size of the authority. The second, which is outlined in paragraph 10 and then in paragraph 15 and 17, are spontaneous arrivals. So prior to 2021, that was the route by which all of our unaccompanied asylum seeking children that came to Leicestershire or with the responsibility of Leicestershire arrived here. So they arrive whether in lorries, trucks, but basically the authority where they on the boundaries on where they are discovered or put themselves forward as unaccompanied asylum seeking children become the authority that's responsible for them, and they were, as I say, until 2021 the key way, the key route that this group of children arrived in Leicestershire. And then the third group, which is outlined in paragraph 11 and 12 and then paragraph 20 onwards, are those children who are identified via the dispersal hotels. So dispersal hotels, as members will be aware, are set up in authorities, are set up to take adults. They can either be families, or they tend to be, if for adults only, they tend to be for male adults, simply because most asylum seekers that arrive in the country either come as a family or come as other adult males. There are some females that come that route, but very few. From the dispersal hotels, having been initially assessed at the port with the authority in which they arrive in the country, they are moved to the dispersal hotels across the country. What our experience has been, and it's an experience that is the same across all local authorities, it's not unique to Leicestershire, is that once the adult hotels, once the adults arrive, very quickly a number of those adults are identified as children. So they identify themselves to be children. We then have a duty to carry out an age assessment, and if we concur that they are under 18, we become the responsible local authority for their care and have all the duties and responsibilities that we hold to any unaccompanied asylum seeking child. As you'll see from the report, that has been a source of a number of youngsters who've come to us, particularly over the last 12 months. And in one such case, one hotel at Kegworth, a large number of people put themselves forward, identified themselves as children soon after arriving in that hotel. Sometimes that age range is quite difficult to determine, so they can say the 16, 17, and it's very hard to argue whether they would be 18 or 19 rather than 17. But we have on occasion had children come through that route who most definitely are children and look 15 and 16. So we do raise nationally and in regionally around our concern that those children have come through that route and an adult route into what is basically an adult environment, an adult hotel. But we become responsible for them and responsible if they are really young. They would go into foster care. If they are 16 plus, depending on their assessed level of need, they may be able to be supported in supported lodging type accommodation or 16 plus accommodation. But I'm sure, as members will appreciate, these are young people who have left a country under often very traumatic circumstances. They have quite often been suffered quite traumatic experiences en route to the UK, and they arrive in the UK often not knowing anybody in a country where they don't know the language. So for all those reasons, even as a 17, 18-year-old, they are vulnerable because of their very experience. Paragraph 24 onward in the report outlines for you the service response to unaccompanied asylum seeking children. So it outlines our responsibilities and duties to accommodate those children, to assess them depending on their level of need and age, about the right type of accommodation that will support them, and if younger children, offer that element of care for them. We provide specialist service via our unaccompanied asylum seeking team, who have developed a real expertise of working with this group of young people and developing those important links across the Home Office nationally and regionally to all the organisations that can support them, both establishing them within our country, but also the links, very importantly, that they often don't know what's happened to family at home, and they need support, and there are organisations that can support getting contact through to people that are left in their country of birth. We have an identified worker within our virtual school who specialises in supporting these youngsters into the right level of education, and often that's in the initial stages also for them to learn basics in English. And paragraph 31 onwards takes you through the resource implications. So the authority receives a level of funding. That level of funding is higher for those youngsters that come via the transfer scheme than it is for those youngsters that are identified via the dispersal hotels. And obviously children who arrive spontaneously with us, that level of funding is not there. And the funding for care leavers, so 18 plus, that level of funding reduces quite significantly, which becomes a bigger issue because quite often a large group of the young people, unaccompanied asylum seeking youngsters, are 17 rising 18 when they come to us. So very quickly in their care journey with us, they become classed as care leavers, and therefore the level of funding that the authority receives for their care and support is reduced. So and all of that is outlined in paragraphs 31 to 34. They're happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the report, and I appreciate this is a topic that, with it constantly being in the news and things, probably isn't easy to deal with for the department. My question was more around the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children care leavers and the costs involved with them. Mainly think that we all know that the department budgets are always tight, aren't they? So it's gone up 55% in 1 year to 110 care leavers, and we get 14,000 funding from the government, and it's costing the county 21,000. You've helpfully put in there that the East Midlands average is 17. First off, why is there a reason that we're about 4,000 more than the East Midlands average? And do you want to answer that bit first?
Yeah, I can answer that as far as it's possible for me to answer that. Some of that workings around the averages, when we've worked alongside our colleagues in finance, is based on quite old information. So there is currently new work that's being done. So whilst they are the correct figures as is, there is a chance that actually the East Midland figure as is actually higher than the one that's published.
And the next part's more of a statement. I don't suppose you can have an answer for me. But that means we've got a funding gap of 7,000 per person, and there's 110 this year. So that's, you know, £770,000. It's gone up 50% in a year. You know, I don't suppose much can be done to reduce the cost of this, can it? It's not easy to get more money from the government, I suppose. Sorry.
No is a quick answer. It's a national issue. So it's one of the areas that nationally we are most concerned about, alongside all of the other things that Sharon's raised in the report. So the funding that comes through from government ought to cover the costs of us supporting unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, both who are in our care but also who have left care. And at the moment, the government funding doesn't cover it sufficiently, as you set out. It's a matter that we have raised with ministers, and indeed we're raising nationally. And I know my colleagues across the country in children's services across the country have been raising it, because it's a significant issue for us. What it's meant this year is that we have overspent on our unaccompanied asylum-seeking budget, because you know, quite frankly, there isn't enough money in there. That it also means that the duties that we have are not fully funded by government. So it's a matter that we continue to lobby on and make sure that they're well aware of. But it has meant that at the end of this financial year, we did end the year with an overspend around our unaccompanied asylum-seeking budget.
Ms. Taylor.
I just want to reassure panel that I continually contact ministers, etc., the government to highlight this issue. But there is another issue for us as well, with the amount of hotels that have been set up in Leicestershire. We are a lot higher than we are with our regional colleagues, so we end up with a lot more children falling out of those hotels than our regional colleagues do. So it's really difficult, but it's a demand-led budget. If the children are here, we have a safe duty, and it's morally right that we look after them. So we're not going to do anything different to what we're doing, but it does end up with this very overspent. But another concern that is huge for me at the moment is the safeguarding of these children that end up in hotels that are full of single men from all different areas and cultures that have young children that we find out are classed as children in these hotels. So for me, the finance is difficult for that, but for me, the biggest concern is safeguarding at the moment. So that's something that we really got high on our agenda, is the safeguarding of these children.
Thank you. I see. Mr. Welsh.
In those circumstances, would we hesitate to take a child into care?
No, never. And if there is any, you know, if a young person presented themselves as under 18 and there was a query as to whether they were 18 or not, we would always go on the side of what the young person's telling us, and we fulfil our duties and responsibilities as a child to those young people.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunt. I'm sorry, can Mrs. Taylor just come back, and then I'll come back to you, Mr.
I just want to say that is forefront of the whole department, that it's child first, but also supported corporately and through the leader and cabinet right up to the top to chief executive. It's always child first, no matter what the problems with the budget is. So we would never not do the right thing for a child that lands in this county.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Yeah, once again, this is an impressive line of work. I'm just struck by, you know, an asylum seeker is not always an asylum seeker, since they're seeking asylum. And are they ever offered asylum, or are they ever deported, or what's the pathway after that stage has been reached?
I mean, while ever they're a child, they're protected under our legislation as a child, and they're a child in our care. But we work very closely with the Home Office and supporting the older unaccompanied asylum seeking youngsters to seek their own independent legal advice, so they're supported as they make the asylum claims. So a number of those young people positively are allowed asylum in this country, to continue to live and be part of this country when they reach adulthood. That is not a guarantee. There could be cases, but they obviously have a right to appeal. What's an added worry for this group of young people is that whole process takes a long time, and it takes a long time to appeal. So during the whole of that time that they are investing in being in this country, and we're trying to settle them, they can have that issue of long-term asylum hanging over their heads.
Thank you very much. Mr. Frisbee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers. Please excuse my ignorance. Is this the best fix for this? This is just a simple, I'm a reasonably new member myself, and I'm just looking at this and thinking, putting children into hotels with no vetting of the people they're sharing the hotels with, and arguably those hotels will be above licensed premises and all. Is this the best practice that we can come up with? I'm just quite astonished that this is where we're at, 2023, and we're looking at putting children into hotels with, I would say there's a degree of safeguarding that we can do, but this doesn't look like a problem that's going to go away anytime soon. So is this just kind of a revolving door that we're going to go round and round? Is this a fast fix? Is this the permanent offer? Because it looks a little bit shoddy to me. Talk me out of it. Thank you.
I think I'll come back to Mr. I don't think a lot of it is the council's fault. I just want to, but because this is being recorded and live, I think it means that we are following other instructions. So it's not.
Chair, I absolutely agree with that. I'm just wondering what I know we're probably following the protocol, and it's probably the same but it just doesn't feel secure to me. And I know I've got experts in the room, and while I've got them, it'd be worth just asking. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll pick that up. I think just to be clear, when children are appearing out of the hotels, as Sharon's described, they aren't transported as children. So what we're finding is that when asylum seeking, what should be adults, are appearing on the South Coast, the Home Office has a strategy to disperse them from the South Coast, and at the moment they're putting them in hotels around the country. So when the Home Office transports the should be adults to the hotels, they are transporting them as adults, and there is some form of age assessment, albeit one would argue that's not working, happening at the point at which they are transferred to, in our case, hotels in Leicestershire. So they're not put in those hotels as children. It's assumed they are adults. When they arrive in Leicestershire, that's the point at which they're telling us they're children. And at that point, our duties, as Sharon set out, kick in. So in answer to your question, no, it's not ideal, because clearly the system is failing those children by transporting them as adults in the first place into those hotels, which are set up as part of the adult dispersal asylum programme across the country. So no, it's not an ideal situation, because if we were getting it right, they would be treated as children at the port or where they arrive, and therefore they wouldn't be transported as adults, and they wouldn't be living, kind of with adults as well. So it's not ideal. What we do know is that there are across the country a whole range of initiatives going on that are looking at how the Home Office deals with the asylum crisis within England, and how those individuals are dispersed and dealt with. There is the National Transfer Scheme, as Sharon set out in the paper, which is where children should be dispersed through, and that's where those children who are coming into ports across the country, and at the moment that is predominantly the South Coast, they're identified as children, and then very quickly they are dispersed to local authorities for us to deal with them as children, place them in appropriate placements and support them. But as our paper sets out, what we're finding is the system isn't working at the moment, and that there are children who are appearing in hotels where they shouldn't be, and that's when our duties kick in, because they're children and we need to deal with them as children. So at the moment, the system isn't working as well as it ought to be, because we shouldn't be in the position where those children are being transported as adults.
Chair, can I just come back and thank the officers for that? I fully appreciate and recognise it's not indigenous to Leicestershire, and thank you for what you are doing. But I'm glad, and I'm sure every member in this room will be in agreement, we want the best service for any child.
Thank you, Mr. Frisbee. Thank you, everybody. Did you want to come back? You didn't want to come back again, did you, Deborah?
Just to reassure panel that we're doing everything we can to make sure that children aren't sent to dispersal hotels with adults, because for me, safeguarding is horrendous in that situation, and for us not to find out till a couple of weeks later that there's a child in a hotel full of single men is not good enough for us.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 13, which is the quarterly it's a performance report, and this is for Q4, so it is goes up to March, the end of March, and this is where we're looking back at the performance and what we're doing. So I think you're doing this, Sharon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will start and take you through the data that relates to targeted early help, youth and justice, and children's social care, and then Alison will come in and pick up on the performance around early years and education. The report, as you know, is a regular report that we bring to the committee. So the beginning of the report outlines for you, as always, the structure and performance that we are measured against and we report upon on a regular basis. It takes you through in point 5 to the 18 indicators that are presented, and shows where there is an ability to measure against our national partners benchmark, that it shows where Leicestershire sits within those quartiles. One of the points to mention for this quarter's reporting is that we moved for children's social care and targeted early help. We moved over to a new recording system in December. So whilst that work has been underway, we've relied upon more manual reporting and performance monitoring. But whilst they've had BI have had to rebuild some of the Tableau reports that are usually available to us. So some of the performance information we've scrutinised more so than normal, and there are some slight anomalies with some of that data, which, as the reports are coming back on track and on stream, we're able to show we're an anomaly with the reporting. It's not about the performance, but I just thought it was important that the committee knew that had been an issue. So paragraph 8 to 13 takes you through the children's social care data that's available that we ordinarily report to you on. It shows where we sit around those children who have become subject to a child protection plan for a second or subsequent time. During this particular quarter, there was a slight increase, but our aim is for 22%. We've measured set our aims against outstanding local authorities. So although that's a slight increase for the last quarter, and we keep, as this committee knows, a really strong and tight overview on that number of children and the circumstances of those children, that was a slight increase for this quarter. Those children, when we audit the cases of every child who's become subject to a child protection plan on more than one occasion, what we can say is that they are not children who have quickly come off a child protection plan and very quickly had another incident that's led to further planning, they tend in the main to be children that were subject to a plan 2+ years ago. We still wouldn't want them to be subject to it more than one occasion, but it does show that it's not about the wrong decisions being made quickly to deplan and then children immediately going back on plans. The paragraph 9 takes you through the re-referral data, again slightly higher, but we do know that from following on from this quarter and following on from getting our Tableau reports back, that percentage has gone down again. So we know that that was something that was around the system that was being used. Again, takes you through the data around the completion in 45 days of single assessments and the measure against children on child protection plans for more than 2 years. Our performance then for care leavers around accommodation, in contact and in education, employment or training remains very, very strong performance. And paragraph 14 explains that due to the difficulties both with the new Mosaic system, but also changes to Capita and Synergy, we're not able to provide that data for actual numbers in targeted early help for this quarter. Those figures are back online and will be reported in future quarters. I think that's the main information. So Alison, whether you want to take through early years and education, and then we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Sharon. Yes, again, as Sharon's put the context for it, it is a report on the quarter compared to the previous quarter. I wanted to highlight in particular that we've got paragraph 19, where we've got the early years fee uptake by 2 and 3 year olds. We have got a slight decrease on that compared to the previous quarter. In paragraphs 20 and 21, 20 is related to the offset inspections that took place in the last quarter compared to the previous quarter, and we can see that there is an increase on schools rated as good or outstanding. In paragraph 21, we've got the offset inspection reports that have taken place for secondary schools rated good or outstanding, and we've got a slight decrease on that, and that's a first time we've seen that for quite a period of time. But a lot of our schools were deemed to be outstanding previously in the secondary sector. In paragraphs 23 and 24, these are points that I've picked up in the previous report around the inclusion, that we've got an increase in the elective home education, and we've also got a slight increase in our exclusions, but we're still not at a higher level compared to national data. And then in the final paragraph in 27, we've got children who are, 27, got wrong off that, and that's the fixed term exclusion and the suspension in there. We have got increases in that, but it still remains lower than when compared to national data on there. And then in paragraph 25, we have got a slight increase in those children not in education, employment or training. Training, but that is a trend that we do see in that particular quarter over a period of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you got Mr. Hills.
So I just get clarity on one KPI, and that's the re-referrals to CSC within 12 months. On the appendix, it says the target's 18.7, whereas in the report, it says it is 22. So we're fairly close to 22, and you said I think it's come down since this report was gained. That's a lot closer to what we're doing, so that's not too bad.
Thank you very much. Right, and we move on to our final report, which another one is really interesting, as they all are, but this is particularly good, I think, is the holidays, activities,
Holiday Activities and Food Programme Annual Report for 22-23, and this starts on page 47. And Jane, I believe you're taking us through this one.
I'll just briefly introduce it and then I'll hand over to my colleague Marla. I'm really pleased to be presenting this report to you today. It's the annual report of the last year of the Holiday Activities Fund, which members will be aware we've had funding since well, way back now, I think in 2021. So really pleased to be presenting this to you today to kind of highlight the really amazing work that's gone on through the Holiday Activity Fund. So Marla Razak, who leads the programme for the county, is online, and I'll hand over to her to take us through the report. Thanks, Marla.
Thank you very much, Marla.
Thank you. I'd first like to provide some background to the report and the programme. So the DFE have recognised that school holidays can be pressure points for some families because of increased costs and reduced incomes, meaning that children from low income households are more likely to experience unhealthy holidays in terms of holiday hunger, their physical health and social isolation. So the Holiday Activities and Food Programme, known generally as HAF, is a national programme that supports school-aged children and young people receiving free school meals, and it's the government's response to these concerns. Each local authority receives funding from the DFE to deliver the HAF programme in line with the DFE guidance and to provide eligible children with free access to holiday activities and a meal during the Easter, summer and winter school holidays. Leicestershire's funding allocation to coordinate the delivery of the HAF programme for 22 to 25 is approximately £1.5 million per year, and that funding must target school-aged children who are receiving free school meals, and the majority of that funding should be spent directly on direct delivery costs. The HAF programme aims to improve outcomes for these children by offering healthy food and opportunities to participate in a range of activities during the school holidays, alongside information, signposting and referrals to other services that would benefit children and their families. The annual report being presented provides an overview of Leicestershire's HAF programme delivery for 22 to 23, and it includes a breakdown of the programme spend, delivery data for the Easter, summer and winter holiday programmes, details of our HAF providers and delivery venues, and some examples of feedback from children, from parents and carers, and from the providers themselves. Members are asked to note the content of the HAF report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I may have misheard. Did you say the £1.5 million was for 22 to 25 or 22 to 23?
It's the annual amount.
Oh, it's the annual amount. So each year we get £1.5 million.
That's correct.
You. Thank you very much for clarifying that for me. Mr. Frisbee.
Chair, I'd just like to thank the officers. I think it's a really lovely, clear report, and I think it's a report that's exceptionally accessible to the end user as well, not just us. It's really clear, it's really succinct, it lists all the providers. I think it should set the precedence of how we get all our reports, because sometimes you need to talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old, and this does actually go in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would we like this report as well? I don't know whether it is circulated to all councillors, but I think it would be really great, because again, I'm not sure all councillors appreciate everything that's done across the county. So if that could be arranged as well for it to go to all councillors. Mrs. Taylor, did you want to come back?
No, I've been fortunate enough to actually go out and see some of these providers during the time I've been lead member, and it's just fantastic to see the children having such a great time, and they all make friends that they wouldn't normally. So especially with the moment with a lot of children suffering from anxiety following COVID and stuff like that, it's really good to get them out with their peers and enjoying themselves and making healthy food. So hopefully I'll get back out this year to witness some of the work that's being done. But no, it's really positive report, so thank you for
Mr. Frisbee.
Just like to say, not only is it a report, it's a directory as well, which is really useful, because there's obviously some local providers in there that we know. So obviously that is a peak time, so we could actually direct them to where some of this active. So it's a report directory, so that's really useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Is everybody else happy with that? Right. Thank you, and thank you very much for putting it together, all of you, but particularly I think Marla for doing it for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really great. And I think we'll all be interested to know what's going to happen and where this year, because this is the report for last year. So thank you very much. We now move on to item 15, and as stated at the start of the meeting, I have no urgent items. Item 16, the next two meetings in this calendar year are the 5th of September and the 7th of November, and then you have the dates for next year. Now, just before we depart, Damien has arranged, as there is a briefing session at 4 o'clock for all members, that if you wish to stay, we can stay in this room and it will be fed through to us here, as Damien said. Other than that, thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and take care. And if I don't see you before, have a great summer. I hope it's a bit warmer than it is at the moment. Thank you.